What do you think of if you imagine Tokyo's neighborhoods? Maybe huge and expensive mansions? Small and pleasant streets with cozy houses? Cheap and tiny mini apartments? Or luxury high-rise condos? Everything. Then you have imagined correctly. In this part, we're going to focus on the wealthier neighborhoods that we can find all over Tokyo and take a look at how they reside. There are two main dividing sides in Tokyo that separate the wealthier from the poorer neighborhoods. To the west is the wealthier area of Yamanote, and to the east is the poorer area of Shitamachi. This is because of the higher terrain in the west was traditionally where the upper class could be found and vice versa. Let's start with Denenchofu. It was the principle of the Garden City that created this project. That is why this neighborhood was founded in 1907, with the idea of a classless society. But eventually it became exclusive places for the rich. In Denenchofu, there are minimal plot sizes, which explains why you can see larger houses than usual. Here, plots must be at least 165 square meters and buildings must not be taller than 9 meters. Even though there is a minimum plot size, it does not mean that you have to build that small. Most plots here are often double of the minimum plot size. If you now look at the average land prices in comparison, you see that the prices are not that expensive. But since the plots here are so large, you still end up with a hefty sum. Even the smallest plots cost around 130 million yen, which is about $1 million US. Keep in mind that this only pays for the land and the house will cost a significant amount on top. There are also a few rules to keep in mind when building here. You are not allowed to build apartments or row houses in this area. There are also a few other rules too, such as buildings having to blend in with their surroundings, limits on the size of walls, and the type of building materials used. Although I find these rules a little restrictive, they do not limit the design and architecture of the building as much as in other areas. There's also a neighborhood association that makes rule. It focuses more on the appearance of the property and how you should live in the area. It was set up to preserve the scenic character of the properties and the area as a whole. Denenchofu is not the only area with such rules. For example, rules such as not hanging laundry out to dry facing the street are relatively common in wealthier areas. The neighboring Jiyugaoka area is a good example of the opposite regarding the plot size and cost per square meter. If you wanted to buy land here, you would have to pay around 3 million yen or 500,000 US dollars for 62 square meter. This may sound strange or counterintuitive to some, but cramming a lot of people into a small area makes the land more valuable. And you might not have guessed it, but this is another example of a more affluent neighborhood. Shirokane. In some cases, it is hard to tell that this is not a middle-class neighborhood. What makes it expensive is the value of the land. There are also far fewer restrictions on the appearance and design of buildings. This is the reason why you will find a wild mix between custom and traditional homes. Apart from a few buildings, you would never guess that these people must be millionaires. Many of the buildings are in a more modern, brutalist style, which seems out of place in many parts of Tokyo. Sometimes you can see a Lambo waiting in the parking lot for its weekly run, or a Maserati protected by a simple chain. People don't really have to worry about the safety of their cars, as there are usually plenty of cameras in these areas. In some cases, there are also gates or garages even on such small plots of land. You could say that in this area, everyone can build anything. But don't worry, that's not all Shirokane has to offer. In another part of Shirokane, there are some high-rise buildings with excellent views of Tokyo's skyline. For the small sum of 168 million yen, you can get a 76 square meter apartment in the Shirokane Tower. If you want something a little more modern and luxurious, then you can get for a mere 478 million yen, a 105 square meter apartment on one of the top floors of Shirokane the Sky, one of the area's luxury high-rises. So what are the signs of more wealthier neighborhoods in general? Well, as I said, we had larger plot sizes. That is not always the decisive factor, but if you add a harmonious mix and a lot of rules and regulations, you can usually be sure that you are in a rich neighborhood. You can also see how well a family is doing by looking at the different levels of privacy. For example, a large wall with a gate or huge vegetation are often used to protect against prying eyes from the street. Of course, the cars also play a role. When it comes to tall buildings, remember that it is not just the view that counts. For flats, security and privacy are also very important in terms of price and quality of living. There are often swimming pools, gyms, and other facilities included, which you can share with other residents. In summary, however, I have to say that in some areas, especially the streets, the difference between the areas is not that great. But there are a lot more individual and special house designs that you will not find in the cheaper areas. And compared to other countries such as New York or London, you will not find too much concentration of wealth in any area of Tokyo. I also forgot to mention that gated communities are forbidden in Japan, as the law states that a residential building must be connected to a public road. But in the case of the residential skyscrapers mentioned earlier, the buildings have their own private grounds, with automatic gates to prevent uninvited guests from entering. In this way, protection and privacy are attempted to be enforced in a certain way. If you liked the video and want to see more about this topic, let me know with a like and comment below.